Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Student Art Podcast. I'm your host, Ross Baxter. Today in the show, we'll be talking about how to become a senior animator and much, much more. You name it, into the Spider-Verse, the amazing work that this man has done. So, as always, folks, if you guys are new and you want to learn how to grow as an artist and learn what it takes to make it as a career, start now by subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. This week's guest, we have animator and content creator Arran Baker on the show. Arran, thanks for coming on, man. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure having you on. So, like I said, we're going to be diving into these three main topics today in the show, but we'll start off with good old introductions, Aaron. Tell us a wee bit about yourself, and we'll take it from there, dude.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. So my name is Arran Baker. I am a senior animator at Jellyfish Pictures. I've been in the industry for approximately 5 years now. And I also do a little bit of freelance content creating for frame-by-frame animation and tutoring for Anim Dojo.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So, I'm just going to throw you this big question, as I always like to say. What got you into animation? Where did this journey begin? What made you want to go down the route of animation?
It's kind of a weird one for me because initially, growing up, I played a ton of video games,
Mm-hmm.
and I was always into a lot of I grew up in the 90s, and my dad is a massive Star Wars nerd.
Nice. Oh, awesome dad
um,
already.
yeah, so we used to binge like Star Wars and like surround sound in the house. So I was always massively kind of into the process even before I knew it.
Mm-hmm.
But video games was definitely kind of the catalyst that instigated me into this kind of area. So I was playing a lot of video games. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was always quite good at art at school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that was kind of, I looked into it and found that this was kind of a field that you could go into. So I went to a college, what can't remember, West Suffolk College. Sorry,
Okay.
it's been so long ago.
It's
I can't even
okay.
remember the name of the college.
Here, I'm forgetting as well, man. Don't you worry.
Yeah, so I went to West Suffolk College and studied interactive media, where it was very broad, kind of in terms of the subjects they taught you, from anything from like website design to graphic design illustration. And one of those topics was animation. Um, they were slightly more on the traditional side, more on like Flash,
Mm-hmm.
but they hadn't really taught any 3D packages or anything along these lines. But they were more than happy to kind of give me creative feedback and criticism if I was almost willing to teach myself the software,
Yeah.
because that wasn't part of their curriculum. But they were really on board with it, and I was eager to try. Yes, that's kind of what set me off on the path.
That's where it all
And
kicked off.
yeah, I think slowly at the time, I mean, we're talking, this was in like 2009, 2010.
Mm-hmm.
I still felt like I knew that I kind of wanted to not be limited by my creative input. And at the time, I still personally felt that video games, even though that was something that initially kind of put me down this path, was still had some limitations
Mm-hmm.
compared to when you were looking at things more in visual effects and feature film. It felt like that had progressed slightly faster at the time, even though obviously today games are exponentially got to the same level, if not higher,
Mm-hmm.
in some aspects as well. So obviously, like there's a lot of films and everything are starting to like dabble into like real time and that kind of thing, which obviously develops from games. So it's all kind of blurring right now.
Yeah.
Um, so at the time, I felt I was always into Pixar and Disney like massively from kid. Like I think I watched Rescuers Down Under 1,000 times because it was the one
Yes.
video that my gran had on
Good
when I
choice.
used to go there.
I have not talked about that on the podcast. Good choice, man.
Such a good film.
Yeah.
I
The
love the Rescuers and the original as well. They were
yeah,
the two videos my nan had on the only ones she had on video. So when we used to go
dude.
over there, I used to just binge them.
The nostalgia is real. The famous seagull. What's the seagull called again? Oh, I
Ah,
forgot their names.
Wilbur, isn't it?
That rings
Wilbur's
it
the seagull,
right.
and then the eagle was Marahute.
Okay.
And then you got Bianca and Bernard
Mm-hmm.
was the mice.
Dude, that's incredible. The nostalgia is insane right now because
The
that goes back.
coding, yeah,
That
it's
goes
great.
back to like. So I was talking to a previous animator. I was talking to Sheer on the podcast,
Mm.
and it just brought back so much childhood memories of that era. Like all dogs go to heaven,
Yeah,
and then Thumbelina. All these old classics that I just craved
yeah,
as a
right.
kid. And then there was another one that I really loved because I used to watch this all the time with my sister. Was It's called the Swan Princess or Swan Lake Princesses or something like that. But
Okay,
it's such a beautiful art style. It's kind of like medieval castle kind of film. Really awesome. But
yeah.
dude, you've brought up so many really interesting topics to start off with. This is starting off with a bang. Let's get going. Woo! I'm loving this. So first things first, I need to ask you, what was your
Yep.
favorite Star Wars?
Oof.
Because you brought up Star Wars with your dad, we have to talk about this. This is an essential part of today's episode.
Sure. So my favorite Star Wars is Empire Strikes Back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that's the one that had like the most concise story and kind of had the perfect balance between I don't know, like there's so many different kind of messages that come across with Star Wars. And obviously it's got such a big fan base, but obviously it just I don't know, in terms of like the writing
Yeah,
and the way it's paced and everything and obviously the characters and how they develop, it just felt like the most interesting one to me.
yeah.
Um, Although that said, I did grow up on the prequels because
Mm-hmm.
that's how I was originally introduced to it. I think the Phantom Menace just came out in cinemas, and my dad took me to see it, and that's kind of what fully invested me in it. So
Yeah,
he brought like my dad. My dad's not so much anymore, but he, looking back on it, he was quite a bit of a nerd.
yeah.
um, so like he got the Star. He used to buy all the games. He had like a joystick on his computer, so he could play pod racing
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of thing. So
That's incredible.
yeah, I grew up on the prequels most, and I
Mm-hmm.
still do have probably some form of a bias. I know obviously it gets a lot of criticism now, but I still really like the Phantom Menace,
Mm-hmm.
just for probably for the lightsaber fights, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
you got to.
but yeah, I still really like them. I do like the sequels, but not to the same degree as the prequels and the original, of
Yeah,
course.
I'm the exact same man. It's I was what was it? I was a fan of Solo though.
Hmm.
I kind of enjoyed Solo, so I held off watching Solo for I think a year and a half.
Okay.
Like I was getting told from my friend, trust me, just watch it. And I was like, nope, not watching it. It does not look the Star Wars that I felt. Gosh, I
Right.
was wrong. And then I don't know. It was the only film. Interested to see what everyone else says in the comments, but that was the one thing that I was like, okay, I like this one. Out of all the new ones or the newest ones, this is the one I
Yeah.
enjoyed the most. No, that's an
Okay.
interesting choice. I think I'll go with the same as you. When it comes to favorites, though,
Yeah.
I'm kind of on a similar boat. And then Darth Maul, obviously legendary. You can't beat Darth Maul, man.
Yeah.
He's the go-to
So
guy.
epic.
So, another thing I wanted to touch on. So you brought up a very interesting point, which I found really interesting because, so you said when you were studying, you kind of almost, I guess, asked the lecturers to kind of do or allow you to do the thing that you wanted to, and then still get feedback.
Yes.
So how did? Because I'm not sure. So for example, in university these days, or I graduated 3 years ago, or just over 3 years ago now, and sometimes I was like I said, I was really fortunate where I went. So I know you went to Bournemouth,
Yes.
but how could I ask this the best way? So I'm just trying to word it rightly.
That's okay.
When asking to do something that is a bit more unique or out of what's usually required. Yes, obviously animation is so normal everywhere. It's like a famous. It's well known. Obviously, it's like standard everywhere. But
Yeah.
to anyone who is trying to maybe persuade a lecturer, is there any advice you would give? Or like, what do you think they would have to do to convince them? Is it just simply do the work? Would you just say just have proof or evidence? Like, how would you convince a lecturer to do the thing that you truly care about if they're not really seeing where it's going?
Yeah. It's a really difficult question to answer. Because I think the thing with college is they were very open minded because essentially with that course, it was very broad in terms of its mediums. We were literally learning everything under the title of media.
Yeah.
So they had like such a vast kind of category that we could experiment with, which is why it was really fun. Like there was definitely things that people leant towards. Like we learned about typography and that kind of thing, and all the history through that. Each semester we had a different almost medium.
Okay.
And yeah, it's a difficult one because so if I step back a little bit, I think the reason I was able to convince them is because when we were in secondary school, so I was about 15, 16, we were supposed to go away and do work experience. And most people go to like a shop or something just to kind of get some idea of what they might be doing as they kind of get a job. And it was actually my mum's idea to kind of find a way to actually not just go and work in a supermarket or something, but rather use that time as efficiently as I could to try and go down the path I wanted to.
Yeah.
And so she contacted a university in Cambridge, where I come from, who had a computer games course, and asked them if I could shadow the course so that when I eventually do finish, if I do go off to college and then want to go to university, I already have some understanding under my belt. And so I spent about 2 weeks studying just under one of their lecturers. And he was obviously had his own classes to teach. So he kind of left me to my devices, but this was in like May 2009 or something.
Right.
And he would just sit me down and he'd look out a window into a car park and said, right, here's how to make a cube. Here's how to like pull vertices around. Now try and model that van. And then he would like leave me in a room by myself while he goes and teaches. And then occasionally I would be able to sit in a class and listen to them. But that really helped kind of when I went to college, and I said, I kind of want to be going more into the 3D side of things. I know you don't teach that here, but I kind of already know how to use a lot of the interface and the software myself. Would you be willing, this is more for like final major project kind of area. And there were some things where like if we were doing designs, they would allow me to use this medium. And I said to them, if you don't have to teach me the software, but if you're willing to like accept this as a format to submit work to, would you be willing to critique it that way?
Yeah.
And they were on board for it. So it's quite a tricky one to say how to convince a lecturer to do something different, because obviously they have a criteria to go by. And especially with a university, I feel like that'd be more strict. But because I was doing a BTEC at college at the time, I felt like they're a little more loose in terms of how much, like, kind of what direction you can go in. And how they just felt like there was a lot more freedom there. Whereas I felt like if you were to go to a 2D or a 3D course in university, they would probably want you to do like a very specific way.
No, like I understand it kind of sounds a wee bit of a crazy question, but you brought up really interesting topics, because so what your mum did for you, first of all, that's amazing, that's incredible. Having someone to do that,
I think that literally set me on my way.
that's great, because I think this is another topic that, first of all, I don't talk about this enough, which is the actual transition between secondary and university. Like, that's the most important decision in most of our lives.
Yeah, definitely.
Or it is like the most important, because it's the thing, it's the, like you said, it's the catalyst to making big decisions in your life, and that decision can make or break a lot of things. And doing so, for example, if there is people who are currently trying to figure out how do you get into animation or trying to find the right path when you're in secondary school, literally, as always, it sounds so cliche, but reach out to people, figure out what is available, and do what Arran has done, because he was able to figure out if he enjoyed what he did, and he obviously figured out he loves animation, etc., and he was able to use that as momentum to find the right career for him. So that's great, awesome. I did not expect you to share that. That's perfect.
I don't think that's actually a story I've told anyone in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's some new some new information there.
Fresh content, folks. You're hearing it first from Arran Baker. Right. So the main reason that I know everyone is here today, because like it says in the title, how to become a senior animator. So let's dive into the main question. We're going to dive into 5 or 6 main questions about this subject, and we'll see what we can do. So first things first. It's going to sound so obvious and so stupid, but what is it? What is a senior animator, and what does the role consist of?
So a senior animator would be given a series of shots or a sequence by their director, and it would be handed to us in a storyboard form, so hand-drawn sketches or a pre-visualization, which is essentially a very basic representation of what the final shot will look like in terms of staging. So we'll have the cameras and the characters, and then we'll have a launch of that sequence where the directors will tell us specifically what is going to happen in this sequence, what the characters should be doing, and the general arc of that moment. And then we go through different various stages of the animation process to get it to a final reviewed shot. And we'll go from through each process will be reviewed by our leads, then our supervisors, and then our directors to get each section of those stages signed off, be it blocking, spline, and polish. That's the general consensus.
Perfect. So, like I said, we're going to be diving into this much more. So we'll break it down a wee bit further. So when it comes to the artists who are wanting to make that step from mid to senior, what is required? Is there any main things that separates a senior to a mid?
I think there's not almost a requirement made by the studio in terms of they're saying, okay, you're a mid now. If you want to do this, this, and this, we can make you senior. I think it's a matter of the transition from all the way from junior to senior is essentially down to your execution and experience. So if the difference between a mid and a senior, which is the same case, but even more so between a junior and a senior, would be that a senior would be assigned more complex shots and potentially more of them, depending on the skill set. Because it is still very specific to each artist. When you get casted your shots, you tend to be, I wouldn't say typecasted, but they will lend the shots more to your strengths.
Okay.
So in my case recently, that's been more acting based over mechanical based. So a senior animator would most likely, if you had a big sequence, and let's say there was 6 shots where they were very short and it was just a small reaction from a character, and it would be one character, they would be more likely casted to a junior than a senior who would maybe be casted 8 characters. They're interacting with each other, there's props, and there's crazy camera movements. So essentially it just comes down to complexity and also how fast you are, because the thing is, some juniors can also be very quick compared to some seniors. And I definitely, through my transition from TV to senior, I have slowed down, but I would say that's more so because of the level of quality that's required, because I'm sure I could step back into TV and start getting the shots out very quickly. But it kind of, it takes a bit longer to try and get to that level of quality. So it's a tricky one, because also I feel like they can depend on seniors more than mids to get shots approved and know what's required of the shot. So I think you're more expected to have less. You're not expected to have less notes, but they trust you enough to know kind of the direction they want to go in, and hope that you will be able to get stuff signed off faster.
Definitely, because there was one thing. So if everyone who's not been able to see this, I'll put it down in the description below. So Arran did this incredible presentation covering his Into the Spider-Verse project. We'll dive into that as well for
Awesome.
the final section before the madness of question time. You name it, folks. I'm going to be bombarding this man with the most craziest questions. So I can't wait to get to that part. But there was one really interesting thing you brought up during this, and that was kind of imitating or knowing how to see where the animator's direction was heading. So there was a point that you said, right, that you were I'll try and put the best context. So basically, like, say somebody does an animated shot and you get passed over that shot to either carry on the next scene, etc., or even finish and take over the shot. You said something really interesting, which was try to get into their heads, like how did they think the shot through. So that's kind of what you're saying here, in the sense that there's a lot more. When you're a senior, it's basically just more straight to the point. It's like you get given the work, and because they trust you, it's a whole kind of trust relationship thing. Because obviously your experience, like you said. So when you said that, I thought that was really interesting. Like when you like, what else did you mean by that? So being able to interpret somebody's shot. Is there anything else that came to mind?
It's more in terms of from the director's perspective, as opposed to being handed the shot from another animator.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what it comes down to is knowing your characters and the kind of mannerisms and things that they would do in that moment. I think that's what it comes down to most. Because if it's very easy for a character to feel out of character.
Yeah.
So when you get launched a sequence, I think they tend to give seniors the ones where like the characters first and foremost in frame and kind of expressing themselves, where like they're completely exposed and there's nothing to because there's a lot of shots where they can be covered up almost, or like they're slightly more forgiving. If you've got, say, if there's a character running down a street and they need to bump into a lamppost, or you've got a person sobbing their eyes out in the middle of a screen and nothing else is happening. Like, they're two very different kinds of shots. And so I think they would trust a senior to do the ones which are literally like first and foremost in front of the character, nothing else is there, and it's just like letting that character be who they are, kind of thing. And so they would give that to a senior, because when they get those when the director launches those notes, they expect the senior to be able to interpret that like within the first or second time and know that's the shot that I needed. Whereas a junior may take some more iterations to get it to that point, and obviously that's not as productive. And so they want to, you know, from a production and the director's point of view, they want to have good quality and fast. That's at the end of the day, that's what they're looking for. So I think they trust seniors more with that kind of thing.
So when you're, this is another, it's going to be sound so obvious, but I need to ask you. So
sure.
I've been talking about what makes a good senior. So I've been interviewing lots of seniors lately, and the main topic is obviously communication. Communication is king, and having that healthy relationship with your mids and your juniors and be able to work cohesively as a team. Alongside communication, is there anything that either you did not expect was important to you as a senior? Was there anything along your way that you've learned has actually really helped you?
Definitely. This is quite a funny one. So one thing that's definitely helped excel myself and my friends in the industry to the kind of level where we are now is definitely through not just helping each other in terms of just getting the shots signed off, but actually pushing each other to a point where we were improving faster, essentially. So when I was on my first job, or at my first studio at Blue Zoo Animation, I had a really great friendship group there, where essentially we started our own group chat where we would submit work to each other, and obviously we would still get our criticism from our leads and our directors in terms of getting shots signed off, but their because of the turnover in TV, it is so fast, and there's very little room to have like concise, like really thorough feedback. And obviously, as striving animators who just started in the industry and super keen to make sure that we can prove ourselves, we formed this group chat called Tryhards.
Oh, awesome! You love it. Dun, dun,
And
dun.
there was, I think, how many of us were there? I think there was about 5 or 6 of us. And we would submit our shots. And if any, obviously, we're still having to get our own shots out. If we ever had a moment, we would literally just like completely rip into each other
Mm-hmm.
and like do this, do that, do this, and just discuss ideas, try and make it literally like try and improve our work to each other as much as we could. And by doing that, each one of us exponentially, we all kind of grew up faster than some of the other artists, who were still obviously improving and getting better. But I think we were just going at a slightly more consistent rate. And it helps the morale of the studio as well. So we were just super excited and pumped whenever we got a new set of shots, because we'd start like dishing out ideas, and yeah, I think that really helped us grow.
That's. I'm so glad you brought that, because that transitions literally into one of the main themes I wanted to talk about, which was we're surrounded by obviously a lot of nice people as well who like to go, "You're amazing, you're great, I love your work," and that's nice and all, getting all the positivities, but like you said,
Yeah.
having the honest feedback and the thing that is actually going to make you succeed is more important.
Yeah.
Well,
They're both.
they're both important. Let's rephrase that. They're both very important. You always have to be kind, and but be honest as well, and make sure people are actually getting the right feedback so they can actually get the job done.
Yeah.
What advice would you give, or like to students who are wanting to get better at critiquing their work first? Like, what advice would you give? So we'll talk about getting feedback from other people, but in terms of you, like, how do you critique your work? Like, I know we're always normally quite harsh critics and stuff, but
Yeah.
Is there anything you look for?
It's in my own work, you mean?
Yeah.
So what I tend to do is, it's very hard, especially when you're stuck in shots for so long and you're trying to see what's wrong with them. Eventually you will get blinded. And so sometimes it's good to take a step back. What I tend to do, which I think it's better now, but there was a time where I would message people in productions and be like, even when we were at university, and I'll just message them being like, "Hey, I really like this shot you did." And for some reason, it seemed like a very strange thing to look at other people's work as they were doing it. And I don't know why,
right?
But especially when I started at my first job, because I was an animation fixer, I wasn't actually animating, and the best way for me to learn, because I needed a lot of work, my stuff wasn't particularly great. I was very lucky that I got a job, to be honest. But I would be looking at other people's work and being critical of their work, but then seeing what the differences that they were doing that I wasn't putting in my own. So I find that the best way to keep yourself, like, keep your eyes open to the mistakes you're making your own work, is to study others. I still do it all the time to this day. I don't think I ever stopped looking at other people's work and being like, "Oh, that's actually really interesting how they did this thing here." So it's just being very analytical. But yeah, it's kind of a weird one, because I get it a lot more now. Like, I see people messaging other people in the studio, which is great. It's great for the community to keep everyone's morale up, like I say, of just being like, "Hey, I really like this thing you did here." But it seems not frowned upon, but people just didn't do it as much when I first started out. And it almost felt like they didn't know how to respond at first. When I would message people being like, "Hey, I really liked, I don't know, shot 26 or something," they're like, "Oh, thank you."
Yeah, dude, the way you just responded there as well, that's always, yeah, dude, I'm the exact same when I see people. I always got so confused as well. Like I'm always as you can tell, just the way I talk, I'm always a loud, energetic person. I'm just like for example, if I just see you animating something, I'm like, "Oh my god, what's he doing?" that's just who I am. But it is weird though. I do agree. It's I think it's like when you're in the industry for a certain amount of time, you get so comfortable, or you get so used to your bubble,
Yeah.
that you forget about the things that matter. As obvious as that sounds, but like just the small chats that we have, like for example, you had your own group, which really helped you stay positive and energetic because you're constantly giving each other feedback, but honest feedback as well. And like
Yeah.
that's game changing. Like that's
Definitely.
something that can most importantly make you keep enjoying your work. Like
Mm.
when you're doing the same thing over and over again, it's so easy to, believe it or not, like we all go through these moments that we just go, you know what, I'm bored, I'm fed up. Sometimes we go through these. Yes, I know we love animation and that, but sometimes there's days that we just don't enjoy. And these are like two main topics that I highly recommend everyone who's listening to prioritize. Like focus on getting good feedback, but always being honest with your own work, and just most importantly encourage the people around you. And it really helps, like Aaron was saying, the momentum of the team. So there's a few other things that I wanted to talk about in this thing. So
Sure.
when it comes to animation, and so we talked about critique, is there anything else though that you think is slowing animators down in their careers? Because is there anything that stands out to you?
Oh, that's a difficult one.
Because
Um,
like I
I
know
think.
being
Oh,
a,
sorry. Go ahead.
sorry, I wasn't trying to be rude, but like, so I
No.
know people are always trying to be perfectionists.
Mm,
And I think that's one thing that takes away their confidence sometimes. Is there anything else that kind of stands out?
yeah. I think there's definitely you do need to have some. You need to have the ability to kind of step back and say, okay, I need to move on from this.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely an element of that. Um, I actually have that even with some of my own personal shots where I started them maybe, I don't know, let's say 3 months ago or something. And then I know that I've done things better than this. And it's just, I'll be already going through the process of trying to, almost polish it. And I'm just like, is there any point in me polishing this when I know I can produce better work now?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's like, I have so many of these unfinished projects on my computer. I probably have about 5 or 6, which I probably could just put them up and just be like, well, I did this last year or whatever. But I think when it comes to, I want to make sure that everything that I submit and expose to the public is something that there is that level of you want it to be up to your own expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that can kind of doesn't slow you down, but I guess it kind of changes people's interpretation of you. Because obviously all they see is your work. They don't, a lot of people online don't know you as a person, so they see your
Mm-hmm.
work, and that's kind of why I hesitate sometimes, because you don't want them to think it's the same when it comes to like submitting work for when you're trying to get a job or something,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of the time, especially I'm learning even more so now, is obviously there's delays of when you've completed a project and when something's released. And so essentially when you're submitting work, you're actually submitting the work that you were good at last year, not your present year. So it's one of those funny things where you can't exactly say to your recruiter, I'm a year better now.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things. So that kind of, I kind of gone a bit off topic there.
No, no,
But
that helps. That helps a lot because you raised up something which I think a lot of us maybe forget, and that's like, disagree with me, please, if you just simply disagree with this. So,
okay.
do you think it's good to put in how long it takes you to make a piece in every portfolio project? So you're saying there about, so we're on this whole discussion right now about, obviously we go through these moments or all the time of, yes, let's make the best shot possible.
Mm.
But so there's one person I have so much respect for in the industry because he posts things, right, and he posts things because it's something that he wants to learn, and he
Yeah.
doesn't care about necessarily the final outcome. He just cares about that, what was the goal for that project, and then
Yeah.
he'll put in the time as well. And then because of he's done so many iterations of these things, he's done, like, no joke, like 100, so his portfolio is just packed. And because of that, when he makes a full project, or a main piece, it's insane. Like,
Yeah, I'm sure.
do you think that's better than, so like these smaller projects are better?
Yeah, definitely. I think there is definitely some things to benefit from those small exercises. I think if I were to do that personally, because like I say, I want to make sure that I've got like the best possible outcome of my presentation online.
Mm-hmm.
I think when it comes to my official portfolio, the way I would treat it is though I'm only showing my best work that I can. But then when it comes to like my more social communal sides of like my portfolio, so things like social media, when it comes down to like if I was on Instagram or Twitter, those kinds of things, then I'd probably be more inclined to post on there my practices.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually what I do. So on Twitter, I'm quite active where since I've been doing this the last 5 years, I would make these shots where I would essentially break down people's work that I really liked.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it for ages. And it would just be stored on my computer and I wouldn't show it to anyone. It was more just for my own training my eye kind of thing. Or I would just be watching a movie and I'm like, wow, that's a really cool shot. So then I download it and then I start frame by frame and drawing over it. And then I'm like, oh, so that's how they did this thing. And I realized to myself, what was the point in me hiding this from everyone else? Like, I'm not competitive in that sense of like, oh no one else can see this. This is my practice. So I started using social media for that kind of thing, where if I ever did a practice of my own, I would upload it there.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like on a Vimeo or something like that, I prefer to like, that's my best of best kind of portfolio area.
Awesome. No, thanks for diving into that, because so I know which one you're talking about, because I remember your when you did let me get the right name so I don't get this wrong. So sync sketch for 101 Dalmatians. I remember when you were doing that. Really nice, really simple, but so powerful. And like I think just sketching it, you don't have to be a master. Like we both understand, it's not about being a perfect sketcher. Yes,
it can be loose.
Yeah, you just be as loose as possible. Like, yes, there's a lot of value with traditional. Like that's one of the questions I will ask you later. But we'll dive into that when we get to the greatness of Into the Spider-Verse and a few other things. But carrying on this kind of topic of animation, what's your thoughts on risks? So, for example, we just talked there about people kind of getting more comfortable about showing their loose work. So you were just saying there about not being afraid to post things that aren't perfect.
Yeah.
When it comes to getting at your comfort zone, like we all have our kind of go-to animation styles or stuff, but what about those random experiments that are completely out of the box, that's so extreme with the poses, etc., or just something so weird? Do you think there's a lot of value of just going completely opposite?
I think there's definitely some benefits in kind of just taking risks and trying things out there that aren't like traditional, conventional, and then kind of seeing the response and seeing kind of what you can learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely some benefits when it comes to that kind of thing.
Would there be any examples that you've tried of anything that's completely outside your comfort zone that you've realized, that was actually quite interesting?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that extreme, but so I did. This is more of an experiment that I did whilst I was tutoring at Anim Dojo, where, like I actually mentioned earlier, sometimes when I'm with my students, I would try and we did this in industry as well. One of my former lead and animation directors, Beda, who runs Anim Dojo, used to describe things in sound effects.
Mm-hmm.
And so he would just say, could you give it more of a whoop kind of thing?
Yeah, okay.
Or something like that.
Awesome.
And it helps because it gives you a sense of timing and pacing. And so I did an experiment once when I was tutoring to try and explain timing and rhythm and how you can kind of play around with that. And so what I did was I'd always wanted to animate something of one of my favorite video games. So I kind of made a custom version of the rig Mr. Buttons and turned him into Crash Bandicoot.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally just recorded my voice on my phone and just went kind of thing, or whatever I did.
Yeah.
And just tried to break up the sound effects and the pacing. And I animated to that and that alone. And I've never done that before. I've never kind of, some people, a lot of the time I've used the bouncing ball to kind of get my rhythm, and I'll put that in my shot to give as a template. But I've never literally just recorded sound and animated to the sound.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that I played around with. And I didn't finish the shot or anything. I was streaming for like 2 hours. But the final result, I was really happy with it. I thought, this is actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what I was doing. I kind of just went along with it on a whim.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the result was actually quite interesting. So there's definitely room for experiments there. It wasn't like crazy extreme, but it was definitely a non like conventional way of approaching a shot.
Yeah, it's not the norm, but no, that's the things that I'm always intrigued, because it's those things that really make you think, and it takes you, like I said, it takes you out of your comfort zone, and it kind of stops you being so perfect all the time, and you can relax more. And when we're going through education, like, that's what it's all about. And yes, I know we're all trying to get the dream job and that, but sometimes, like, there's multiple ways of doing a shot. It's not just one particular way. Like, the biggest mistake I feel is, I feel like a lot of people like to follow people's processes exactly the same way, but we all think differently. Like, your mind is completely different to the way I think. Like, say we were both being thrown the same animation shot, you might prefer doing IK, I might prefer doing FK, and if, like, instantly, just by that alone, there's going to be a completely different shot. That sounds so basic, but it's
no, totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's one of those things. Like, a lot of people, they'll ask me in terms of how they can improve with like speeding up their process, or kind of how I approach a shot. And I'm more than happy for them to like, I'm more than happy to teach them my workflow, but it's not always going to work for them. So I always, whenever I give talks and stuff about my process for students, I do disclaim, like, this isn't the way to do it. There's a million ways to do it. And there may be things in here that are going to help you, but, you know, adapt it to your own way. So like, that's actually kind of how I built my own workflow. Was my first lead, my second lead at Blue Zoo had his own process, his own workflow of kind of, he used hotkeys with Tweet Machine. And I thought, that's actually a really ingenious idea, because it kind of speeds up your process. And so I tried it, and I was like, I really like how you've approached this, but I feel like, for me, it's going to help if I use slightly different values and all this kind of thing. And I played around with it, and then I started to adapt it in my own way, but it was all based and inherited from his initial idea. And I literally still use that to this day, and that was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, I prefer people to like take an idea from someone and then make it their own.
Yep, completely agree. Because so I was talking to Arran about this before we went live, because I was talking about just how I'm thinking about going back to animation in the future. My main thing's environment art, like I love sculpting, etc. But everyone's always kind of looking up, right, what's the perfect value for this, I don't know, metal? And I'm like, no. It's, yes, there's certain rules that we have to stay true to when it comes to realism, but there's also boundaries that we like to, when it comes to games. Like, it doesn't always have to be perfect. And like, this is like the main topic that we're talking about here. It's not about, if you're more technical, then yeah, that's fine, that's great, there's nothing wrong with that. If that's the way you think and you feel, right, this is the way that you get your work done, then I guess that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But it is you learn better when you actually put a tutorial that you're watching into practice in your own way. Like, I always, when I was first starting out, just like Arran said, one of the first ever tutorials I was watching was like how to make a sci-fi corridor, like right at the beginning. And I was like, you know what? Instead of just doing the exact same thing as the guys showing, just go crazy with all the shapes, and it became so much more fun. So
Totally.
Just experiment, explore, get out of that comfort zone. Right. The next kind of area that I want to dive into is shapes. So
Interesting.
Shapes is something, once again, here I'm doing topics based on what I've learned from you, man. So this is why this is such a fun podcast, because I've learned a lot from your videos. So once again, folks, make sure to check out his content. Links are down below. Have fun, make the most of it. So how does the different character shapes affect the way you pose?
That's a really good question. So the way I tend to think about shape language is, that's how I refer to the term at least, is I look at the initial designs of the character. So what, like in terms of their proportions, are they more square? Are they more round? And the reason I look at that is because those initial designs are what makes the essence of that character, and that's kind of what makes them who they are. That's in their personality. Those things are signed off beforehand because whoever's designs that is like, this is the character. And so I feel like, at least for me, when it comes to posing, it's my duty as an animator to make sure I'm staying true to those designs, but also try and push it in a way that I feel can make it most appealing. So I'll still be looking for the same principles that we would use in terms of making simple and complex lines. And I find that one thing that I was making the mistake of when I first started out is overcomplicating things.
Yep.
And one thing that I still, to this day, boggles my brain whenever I watch like Disney animated movies is how simple they make it look, yet somehow it feels so hard to achieve.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Tell me about it.
It's one of those things. And I think what it comes down to is they've literally planned it so much that they've literally brought it down to the essence of what that character would be doing in that moment. There's the biggest compliment you can ever get is, I can't see that character doing that thing any other way, because that is the way they would do it. And so I feel like posing takes such a big, important part in that, because the way they hold themselves is kind of what makes them who they are. And using shapes, you can use that to kind of help complement that attitude. So if I wanted someone to be very like uptight, let's say we're just talking about Mr. Incredible, for example, everyone knows who he is. And he's got like a very broad shape to him, and he's almost like a triangle where he's got very broad shoulders and he gets thinner as he goes down, essentially. And if I wanted him to feel very tense, then I would make sure that I'm posing him in a way that keeps very sharp lines and very straight lines. As opposed to if I wanted him to be very energetic, let's say he was throwing a punch, I would make sure that I'm posing the shapes to make it as simple as I can, so that the entire line flowing through his body would like go through that force of that action. But kind of craft it in a way to make it as simple as possible as well. Because especially when it comes to more realistic things, I think this is why if you look at very caricatured things, so let's say Hotel Transylvania is probably one of the most...
One of my favorites. I'm so glad you brought that up, man. That's made my day.
I think that's one of the movies that really pushes shape language, because they literally sculpt it in a way that they've simplified the shape so much that it's literally about three or four simple lines, but those lines should still determine who that character is. So if I think of Dracula, if he was standing sideways, he's got essentially one big line going down his back, which would be from his cape. And then you've got like an almost, his neckline would be completely straight going up to the back of his head, but then he's kind of got a sharp chin and a pointy nose. But because of those shapes, we instantly from the silhouette can tell who that character is, as opposed to like, I don't know, let's say, I can't remember their names, but like the Frankenstein or something, who's like really square. Yeah. He's super square. And like the Mummy, he's got more curves to him. But like one thing I love about the movie is you can turn if you just had like an alpha channel, it's like a silhouette of every character, I could tell you who every one of them was. And I think that's where shape comes into play. I think that's a really important one. So even with like, when I was working on TV shows, was working on a show called Go Jetters, and they are essentially beans with arms and legs.
Right.
but they are slightly different proportions. But you can still use, as small as those changes are, you can still use those shapes to complement that character and give that slight different attitude. Yeah, that's kind of how I think about it. I just try and keep it as graphic as possible.
What an
I'm
answer.
I really like graphic things. Like, I've had a discussion in the past where people have said to me how much they hate posing things in profile.
Wait, what do you mean?
So if you were to go completely on the side of a character, so you didn't see the other side. Let's say I was facing like to my right of a camera.
Yeah.
You only saw one side of their face.
People don't
So
like
you
that.
wouldn't see the other eye or the other side of the mouth. Some people hate that kind of posing because it doesn't give it dimensionality. But I'm kind of, it's just a preference thing. Some people don't like posing that way. I've had this discussion with a few animators where I'm like, oh, I hate profile, but I love it because it's super graphic and it's really like simple, and you can help push the shapes in a way to make it more complex or simple. But I think that's kind of how I like to pose. I try and keep it very graphic. That's kind of just I guess you could say, my style of posing.
No, wow. Okay. Wow, and I really appreciate you saying all that, man. That was incredible. So I've prepared a few questions around this kind of area that, like it said, I think it's really interesting to talk about. So we've talked about shapes and the importance of silhouette that you've just explained there. How does that transition when it comes to age? So the older the character gets, what's the main thing that changes in animation? So for a child versus an elderly person, what are the things that are different?
That's a difficult question. I think a lot of it comes down to their weight and their flexibility. So like with a child, one thing that I love about them is they haven't really got caught of their balance yet. And so they've got very heavy heads because of their proportions.
Yeah.
And so when they're walking, it's almost like their head is overbalancing, and so they're using
they're waddling around.
Yeah, they're kind of like having to throw their body around to stop their head from kind of falling onto the floor. And they also, I actually had this conversation with her girlfriend yesterday. I find it hilarious about kids, especially babies, is they don't really know what to do with their limbs because they haven't inherited personal ways of communicating gestures and that kind of thing. And so when I saw this dad with like a harness on, and his baby was on the front of his chest.
Yeah.
And they're just walking along, and the dad's doing his own thing, and the baby was literally just ragdoll. Like limbs were just flapping as he was walking down the street. And it just makes me laugh because I'm just like, babies don't know what to do with their bodies. They kind of just they do little flinches with their legs and arms.
Yeah.
And I find that really interesting because when a child is learning to communicate to an adult, or anyone for that matter, even another baby, they don't really know how to, if they're hungry, they don't know how to communicate they're hungry other than probably crying.
Yeah.
Because they haven't learned the ways to communicate gestures to help, because they can't speak yet. So that's kind of how I think about babies.
That's interesting, man.
Elderly people is an interesting one. I've never animated an elderly person.
Ever. Oh, that's a good challenge for the future then.
Yeah, I'd love to. One person who stands out to me that I love is Coco.
I've not watched that yet.
Have you not?
Right, I
love that movie.
There's three. Well, so the other film I've not seen, right, and I've been getting a lot of flack for it. It was Moana.
Moana's great.
So I've not seen Moana yet.
I saw that the other day again.
Oh, you watched it the other day?
Yeah, we have it on our system at work, so it's good. Again, studying as I'm working.
Yeah, no, that's smart, man. You got to, because I've just been, like I said, when you said Hotel Transylvania, I could watch that on repeat, literally non-stop, man. Like, I am obsessed with that. I think they're making a fourth one.
Yeah, they are.
And I've not seen the 2D. So they've on Netflix. There's the 2D cartoon show.
I don't tend to watch the spin-off TV shows of features. I don't tend to watch those, but I'm sure there's some cool stuff in there.
Yeah, I've not seen that yet. But you raised something really funny there that just brought me back to a hilarious memory in my life. So you said there about the baby kind of ragdoll kind of thing. So
Yeah.
there's this old video, right, of me as a kid with my sister, and my sister is a few years older than me, and I'm like one or something,
Mm.
I'm like on this couch, right, and I'm just wobbling around, right, and
Yeah.
my sister literally pushes me off the couch, right. And I fall, and for some reason I'm not crying. And I was like, okay, let's get back on the
Yeah.
couch. So I'm just wobbling, trying to climb back on, right? And you just
Yeah.
see like everything. I just look like jelly.
Yeah.
And then my sister was like, "Oh, let's try this again." Pushes me off again. Boom. And then I was like, "Come on!" Again, yeah. The funny thing is, right, is I'm so fat. Like I'm just like this fat baby, just going like crazy, going like climbing Mount Everest. I'm getting to the top, and then my sister just like literally knocks me over. That just brought me way back. It was such a good
Brilliant.
video. If I ever get the confidence to share that on Twitter, oh my lord, you guys will be
I'll
breaking
definitely
out.
be liking it.
Oh, such a fun one. No, but that's a really interesting thing. So when it comes to like the older, so would you? I know you have not. You said you've not tackled it,
Yeah.
but based on your perspective, would you say it's harder probably to do an elderly person versus a baby, or would you say it's the other way around?
It's a difficult one.
I know I'm throwing lots of big
Yeah,
questions at
no,
you, but it's fun
I like
discussions.
the
Though.
questions though. Oh, I really don't know. I think there's something with there's more comedy to be played in a baby than an elderly person, just in terms of physical performance.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for me personally, I find animating comedy easier than animating sincerity. And I think when it comes to elderly people, there's something so like if you were to do it right, it has to feel so sincere.
Mm-hmm.
And like you have to be so honest with yourself because they're very frail and but the thing is that obviously they've had a lot of experience in their lives, and because they're not able to physically move because they're so frail, they're so limited in their movements that everything they do has so much like intention behind it. And so I feel like with a baby you could be a lot more like loose and almost spontaneous, and there's just so much charm in that it feels like I would say it's slightly more forgiving.
Yeah.
Whereas with an elderly person, if they wanted to go, I don't know, if they wanted to pick up a book and they want to get out their chair, there's a certain way that they would do that has to feel so sincere in order to make you believe that person.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like personally, off the top of my head, I imagine that an elderly person would be harder to animate.
So what I'm getting from this is when I think of an elderly person for animation, it's more focused on the face in terms of the emotion side of things, because it's easier for them to move their head. I feel. And then would you say animating an elderly person is more like they're almost like, this is a bold statement, but it's like they're almost like a robot, because it's like very precise, like you said. It's very specific, whereas so it's a bit more, it's more rigid.
Yeah, I'd say they have more intention because they are limited in their movements.
Yeah.
So like I wouldn't necessarily say robotic, but like it's very it is very specific. It's very precise in their actions. So like, if I wanted to get off my chair now, I could do it multiple ways because I have the ability to. I could lean on one arm and then, or I could reach one leg out. But for an elderly person, that's going to obviously, they have to intentionally know what they're going to do before they do it, because otherwise they may make a mistake.
Yeah.
Or, but I feel like the reason I love Coco is because of how much she doesn't move, and you can just see her head like slowly jittering, because obviously it takes a lot of strain on her to keep her head up because she's so frail and fragile. And then when she wants to get something out of the drawer, the first time she can't physically go to reach for the drawer to pick out the thing, so she has to slowly lift her arm up and then just point ever so slightly of her hand towards the drawer so that the child can go and pick out the drawer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you watch the movie, you'll know what I mean.
Yeah.
I highly recommend you do because it's amazing.
Oh, dude, I'll keep you posted.
So good.
I'll write on the list. This list is getting worse, by the way. Everyone who's tuning in, who's been a long-term listener, you guys know the list is just getting worse. Like, I've got so many things that I fall behind, especially in the game category. I apologize. I'm doing my best, but
I'm a bit like that with games, to be honest. I'm that person where like I wait for the hype to die down and I play it like years later.
Yeah.
Like I'm playing the Arkham series at the moment, the Batman Arkham series, and that came out in 2009.
Yeah, a long time ago.
I'm only just playing it now.
Well, I've been on this like 2-year thing of I'll definitely play it. Definitely play it. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna play it. Not playing it. I'm just not playing it.
It's easy to get lost in other things.
Oh, dude, man. When I see ZBrush, right? Life is just awesome. I just see ZBrush and I'm like, yeah, everything else does not matter. Furniture sculpting, I'm sorted for life.
Yeah.
That's my go-tos. Right. This is like right, so this is the last question before we get into Spider-Verse.
Okay.
This is probably going to be the toughest question I feel of this whole interview.
In
a good way though.
Okay.
How can artists leave a lasting impression on their work so people go back?
Whew.
So there's a lots of artists, right, that we admire or like we look up to that are like, no matter how many times we watch, say, a certain animated shot, you're just like, that's beautiful, that's breathtaking. Like there's just a certain moment that is just rewatchable. It has that factor.
Yeah.
What?
I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no. What I was just gonna say is like, I know we all like to make great things and that, but what is there? If there is that kind of thing that somebody is trying to aim for, like to get that wow factor, what stands out to you, or how could they get closer to that?
I think for me, it's that subject of setting trends, not following them.
Right.
In terms of if you've got something, this kind of comes under that taking a risk factor, where you've got to, if I think of, for example, Spider-Verse, the reason that set off everyone blowing their minds so stylistic, in terms of artistically, was because of the style and how much they push those boundaries. And it wasn't conventional. They were doing things that were almost frowned upon. There were things that were like, don't do that. And it was one of those, I love that they were taking those risks. So I think you have to take a risk if you really want to stand out. Like, there is still a nostalgia value in what I'm currently working on at home, but I'm trying to kind of take it into slightly new areas and kind of different interpretations. But I'm working on a project where I'm essentially taking the fundamentals of what we've learned in terms of style and then kind of trying to flip it on its head slightly to kind of just see the response and be like, oh, wow, okay, this is kind of different to what we've seen before.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important because, like, one thing for me, I say this all the time to people, is like, I'm not too, like, when it comes to art, I'm more into how you kind of express yourself and your ideas more than how you execute it. And so, for example, like, sending a message is really important and kind of like your purpose behind what you're trying to convey, because there are movies out there and there are short films and like music out there, for example, that isn't like executed the best way it could potentially be, but because of what they're saying and how they're communicating it, it's so powerful and it sticks in your mind. And so I feel like, for me, just having a genuine idea that comes from you and, no one else, that's the thing that I feel like is so important in animators, is you've got to say something about you got to obviously you still got to make the character who that character is, but you can still convey that in a way that also feels genuine to you, and having your own input and ideas. Because at the end of the day, I think your ideas is what makes you a good animator. It's not how good your arcs are or how good your posing is, because that's, at least for me, I'm not saying those things aren't important, because obviously they are. But if I see when I see a good shot, for me, a good shot is an idea. And so when I message people at work or whatever, and I'm like, oh, I really love this thing you did here. It's more the idea they had. Chances are it's still really well animated, but that's not what I'm saying when I compliment them. Obviously, I may say, oh, there's some really nice timing in this. That's a different subject. But generally, when I'm thinking that's a good shot, it's usually for the idea.
Yeah, because when it comes to this topic, and I know everyone listening probably gets told this all the time, but putting your own stories or your life into a piece is so crucial.
Definitely.
There was so I had the chance to, if you're listening, Sheer, once again, it was awesome talking to you. So I was interviewing another animator called Sheer Barron. She works at DreamWorks, so she just got a job at DreamWorks, and she made this short animated film based on her trip to China and her own adventure of going back backpacking. What do you call it? What's the phrase?
Backpacking.
Yeah, my brain just went blank for a second. You saved me there. I was like, where's it going? My brain's gone. Just disapparated. But yeah, and the fact that she added her own emotion, and it was so subtle but so well executed, and it meant something to her.
Yeah,
it goes back to what you were saying there. It's like something different. There's also like the other take of, like you said, going completely out of the box. Like, for example, imagine gravity didn't exist, or like try to explore gravity and go, like, for example, if you did say an animated project, right, and you had two screens, you divide it down in the middle, the same character, one's on Mars and one's on Earth, and then you do different animated shots based on like how they would interact. Or like even add a third compound, like the moon. Like, take for example, this is a whole nostalgia. I love this. Was Scooby-Doo Cyber Chase? If you've ever seen this movie, you guys know what I'm talking about. How awesome it is.
I think I remember that movie.
So good. That's another film me and my sister loved watching. Great film. But anyway, in that movie, right, there's a 1 minute clip of them going through like 8 different scenarios. So there's one in a jungle, one in like the Colosseum, one in the moon, one in a desert, and like you just see the whole team walking differently in these different places, and it's just interesting how you think differently when you throw yourself into a completely different scenario, like you're saying. So I think gravity is a really interesting one. No, but thank you for saying that, because it's always something that, I know I've said it so many times in today's episode, but it really makes you grow as an artist when you realize that just going outside your comfort zone, it just makes such a big difference. And speaking of Into the Spider-Verse, let's start talking about it. So first of all, what made you, I know you kind of touched on there, but what actually, what do you think of the film? Like, why do you love the film? It's supposedly it's meant to be the most famous Disney or famous animated movie of all time now, based on rankings and numbers.
Really?
Wow. I never thought it would be number one. Like, I think it's incredible. I think it's awesome.
That is insane. No, I think the movie is phenomenal. Not only as an artist, but also just as an audience, in terms of, I think one thing that makes that movie, obviously, like, the visuals pop so much, and that really helps complement the story. And obviously, they lend the style independently to each character, which also helps give it like its sense of identity. But the thing that just made me connect to it so much was in terms of the writing and who the characters are, the pacing of the movie. Like, everything is so concise. I think there's one thing that bothers me in movies and TVs, for that matter, TV shows, is when there's just shots that are just made without, and like, it didn't feel like it needed to be there. And
I've got so many things that I want to say. Right, I'll let you finish. You've just made my brains go, how dare they do that?
Yeah, there's just things where I'm just like, did we even like what was that shot for?
Mm-hmm.
Is my main question. It's the same when I'm thinking about animating a shot. The first thing is like, what's the context? What's the subtext? What is the point of this? What's the purpose of the shot? And so, one reason why I love Spider-Verse in that sense is because there's not one shot in there that isn't communicating something,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's just a gag. Sometimes you need that gag to sell. Like it sets the atmosphere and the tone of the movie. Um, like I don't know, it could even just be like a cut to an expression on Peter Parker's face where he's just like freaking out or something.
Mm-hmm.
But like, even though that seems like that could be considered a throwaway shot, that says something about his character. Um, and so I think it's just in terms of that movie, they just paced it so well. Somehow they were able to turn. They wanted to make people who weren't familiar with Miles still familiar about the concept of Spider-Man. So they introduced the whole thing still with Peter, but they're so able. They literally every shot for shot was able to like break it down so concise that we could move on from him and go from like we know Spider-Man, he's doing all these cool things, and now it's just we're back to this kid. He's just like a natural, like you know, kid going to a private school and he doesn't feel comfortable in himself and he has all these expectations of him,
Mm-hmm.
and it then builds him up into forcing himself to become this person with all these responsibilities that he just had thrown upon him. But they just build it and pace it in such a way that it feels so natural. Like the whole entire time you feel so connected to Miles because he is just this normal kid, and that is what Spider-Man is. Like that's why people like Spider-Man over other superhero movies, is because he is just this normal guy who is doing what he can because he's just happened to be the one that got bit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the point of that story, is like even when it says Peter dies, like one of his like MJ says in her speech, like Spider-Man, like Peter says that anyone could have got bit, he just happened to be it. Like he wasn't made to be Spider-Man. Like she said in her own way, we're all Spider-Man because anyone would do that same thing in those moments because that's what makes us human.
Mm-hmm.
So like, it just has so many really good, interesting like messages. But obviously, I love the art style as well. That just makes me, as an artist and as an animator, just go, this is insane.
It's just madness. No, I agree with you, everything you said. It was just I don't really have anything else to say to that. It was just however, the one thing I'm not sure what it was like for you because actually no, I already know this because I talked to you about this previously. So for the first time, right? So this was another film that I held back to watch because I wasn't sure if it was for me because it was a wee bit of a different approach. I watched the first 5 minutes, so I was into the first 5 minutes and I was like, I want to turn this off. I was like, I don't know if I want to watch this, and then it hit like 8 minute mark, and I was like, I'm never turning this off. I was like, I'm watching this, and then boom, I was just like, here we go. The show begins, and it was like an amazing film.
So good.
It's one of those things though that it's one of those films that I'm only gonna watch every so often though because it's that powerful. It has that much of a kick, in such a good way that it's like almost like your highlight of the year. It's like that film. You wait like.
It's a treat kind of thing.
Yeah, I want to like enjoy it as much as I can. There's a few other films that I'm exact same. The only one that doesn't that's not on that list is Harry Potter because I'm obsessed with Harry Potter and I watch that almost every day. So that's kind of
I get that. There's some movies I've just seen too many times to count, and it's beyond repair.
Yeah, dude, I no joke. I think I've watched Harry Potter 3,000 times, like at least. I'm not joking, man.
I'm kind of the same, honestly. If there's just sometimes I just crave it, and so I'll say to my girlfriend, I'll just be like, "Do you want Harry Potter?" And she's like, "No, I've seen it so many times." I'm just like, "But it's Harry Potter."
It's Harry Potter. Come on, turn it on. Here, because that goes back to that main point that you just said there, and it highlights so much importance is relatability. It's what you said there about Spider-Man. So Peter Parker, then we got Harry Potter. They're just normal people. So when you create that unique piece.
Everyone loves an underdog story.
Yeah, an underdog. Yeah, remember the famous I think it was a short film, but the hero's journey.
Mm,
Have you seen that?
yes.
The animated short. It's almost like a tutorial / short film kind of thing,
Yeah.
but really
I think I've
nice.
seen it.
I highly recommend everyone check out. It's such a nice piece of animation. So when it comes to this piece, first of all, to anyone who's not seen it, tell us a wee bit about it and like what were you trying to achieve? Was there any main kind of goal?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting one. Essentially, what the final piece ended up being was a 16-minute short clip based on the art direction that they made for Into the Spider-Verse. And it's just Miles swinging through the city and trying to find something bad that's going on, trying to help people, and he sees some police sirens going, so he follows them.
Mm-hmm.
And then as he's going that direction, a massive explosion happens behind him. And then he's like, oh my God. So he just catapults himself towards the explosion. And then it kind of has a establishing shot of him looking over the city before he's about to go in. So it's kind of like a mini narrative in there, which is relatively basic.
Mm-hmm.
But I think one thing that I was trying to get in there, just in terms of for me, it was literally just a practice in terms of animation. I wasn't trying to communicate anything particularly powerful with it. It was more like, this style is incredible. I want to see if I can do it. That was literally, it was as simple as that.
Yeah.
Initially, the thing is, I do consider myself like an aspiring artist outside of being an animator, in terms of like, I love to paint, I love to draw and that kind of thing. And so initially, this whole thing stemmed about because I missed lighting. I love lighting as like a 3D artist as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I did like even when I was at university and I did my final major projects. Like when I was part of my final major project, I did the lighting on that and I loved it. And I just missed lighting. I'd been animating for a few years and I was just like, oh, I kind of miss this. And so initially, it started out as I saw the trailer for Into the Spider-Verse and I was like, that style is so cool. I wonder if I can paint something like that. That's all it started out as, a digital painting. And then I was like, actually, I do miss lighting. And so after doing a couple of like rough paintings, I was like, okay, let's make some geometry and try and light it and render it in this style. That was mostly what it was for me, was a lighting and rendering project.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, well, I know how to animate. It would be fun to animate Spider-Man going through this. Screw it. Let's just do an entire process.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of escalated into like this massive, ambitious project, which was way beyond my depths. And I didn't really know what I was doing half the time, but I got a lot of feedback and it was almost very spontaneous going through the process where like I'd be going on the tube to work, just to do my normal animation daily job. And on the tube, I would just have my notebook, just trying to figure out ways that I could achieve this, knowing my know-how. Because I know there was a lot of technical processes that were made to make that style in that movie. And it was very specific. And they would write all these shaders to make sure it felt like it was working in movement, but still felt comic book printed. And I knew that I'm not technically that capable. And so I was like, I know how to paint in Photoshop. I can still I felt like in my mind, I would be able to achieve something close to that style and still not be as well done, of course,
Mm-hmm.
but still get close enough to it for you to identify it as that style, but using my knowledge of digital painting and rendering in Maya and Photoshop.
Wow.
And so that's kind of how it all stemmed about.
Yeah, because so this goes back to a very interesting topic that I feel that a lot of people fail to acknowledge. So your piece basically went viral. Like it went, there was like 20,000 people or even more. It was insane. I think it was it 70,000 likes or something? It was, there was a lot of interaction.
I think it had 1.1 million views or something.
Yeah, dude, like madness. And
it's mad.
So the reason why I wanted to bring this up, so first of all, we all love the piece and it's incredible, but it goes back to the point of you weren't aiming to go viral.
No.
You were aiming to make something that you were passionate about.
Yeah.
And this is the thing that I think we get sidetracked. So when we see people who do things that are successful, etc. So a really amazing animator came on the show, and I had so much fun talking to him. It was Jeremy Schaefer. And Jeremy,
I've spoken to him a few times. Yeah,
really
nice guy,
really nice person, incredible animator, and I was so excited when and the same thing happened to one of my friends as well. Like, they didn't plan for this. You didn't plan for this, and so anyone who's trying to get, I know I asked the question to Arran a wee bit about 10 minutes ago. Like, what is that lasting impression? What is that thing? Sometimes it doesn't happen, even if you are coming up with something, right? Like, you think it's the greatest idea. Maybe not everyone will love it, but you never know. So don't think that you have to make the next killer thing for people. Make the most killer thing for you. What's the thing that you are obsessed about? And that could then come, that could then kick off. Like, the same thing happened to, I'm not sure his name, but it was the guy who did same topic, so Into the Spider-Verse. So he did 6 transitions, and it was one of the biggest virals of this year. He got 70,000 followers in a week because of it, and everyone in Disney in LA saw it. He did a transition between what's it called? So Peter Parker, Ben 10. Do you remember and then Star Wars?
Yeah.
So he did those 4 transitions or something into characters, and that, once again, that wasn't his goal. Was not anything about viral. It was simply doing something that's really fun and unique. And this is what happens when you go outside the box. Like, look what happened to Arran. Yes, he was already an incredible animator and he already was successful, etc. But he did something different, and trust me, it can really, if you're in a situation that maybe you're figuring it, am I in a country that maybe don't have lots of options available for you? Take a lot of my friends, for example, they live in countries that they have to go to other countries or do lots of freelance. But because they did something different, they now have countless options. And this can really make your thing so much easier for you. And like, this was another main reason why I wanted to talk about this, because it's game changing when you actually just don't care about what everyone else thinks. You just have a blast. Like, I just, like, if you check out my art, I've actually deleted my ArtStation because I don't need it anymore. But on my ArtStation is like Harry Potter art. It's just me sculpting thrones and stuff and furniture, because that's what I geek out about. And then sci-fi, dystopian worlds, you name it, I love it. So, dude, thank you so much for sharing everything on the podcast. It is time for the madness.
The main questions.
The main part. The reason why everyone comes to the podcast. It's not about animation anymore. Well, actually, these parts are always random. But the good thing is, when it comes to animators, I always like to throw in lots of fun questions, because I am obsessed with animation as well. But we'll start off with probably the difficult question. I'm going to take out Into the Spider-Verse. You're not allowed to say this. This is out of the list. This is not a count. Favorite animated movie of all time?
That's a good question, and the answer is it's not Into the Spider-Verse.
Hey, okay.
My favorite animated movie, which is probably the movie I've seen most out of any other movie, is Ratatouille.
Okay, Jeremy said the same answer as well. Excellent choice. I'm loving this. Right, okay. Explain yourself, man. Explain yourself. Tell me why you love the chef of greatness. Why is it so, well, we all know why it's so beautiful. It's such a great animated movie, but tell me why.
I think it's a movie, for me, it's a movie for the dreamers. So it's one of those movies where someone is so passionate about something, they're the outsider, people are telling them, you can't do this, it's not natural, but he's so determined to do it and prove them wrong. I think it's just one of those movies that I definitely can relate to as well. But I'm sure, it's such a relatable thing of someone saying, you can't do this. And, I had people telling me that you wouldn't be able to go off and do movies or, whatever. And it's just one of those things where, for me, like, one, there's so many things I love about that movie, but there's just one scene in particular which I literally end up nearly in tears each time because I just relate to it so hard.
Can I guess it?
You can?
I'm gonna say it's the same one as Jeremy because it was the same one as me. Is it the scene in the glass bottle? The glass
It's
jar?
not.
Okay, can I have another guess?
Yes.
Oh gosh, right. Is it? Oh, here, this is fun. We should do this more often.
Yeah,
It's
it's
a guessing game,
fun
right?
challenge.
Oh boy, right? Okay, what is it? Is it? Well, I'm actually more tempted now just to know. Weird. Well, actually, the shot that I thought was actually the saddest for me, right, was when all of the rats saw all the dead rats on the window.
Yeah.
Is it that?
It's that scene, but not that specific moment.
Okay.
So
here, let's have the answer.
Okay, so there's a part when the dad is speaking to Remy, and he says there's a couple of things that he says in that sequence in that I guess it's like not an argument, but they're disagreeing. And his dad says you can't change nature, and then he says change is nature, the part that we can influence, and it only happens when we decide. And I just love that quote. And then he goes on to say that one thing that's predictable about life is its unpredictability.
Yeah.
And I just really love those quotes. And I think it's really important that there's, I don't know, for me, I can relate to it where people say that's not the way things are supposed to be done. Or like I said, you can't do this, you can't do that. But it only takes that one person to step out and like step in front of everyone and say, no, we can change things.
Yeah.
And that's the way, and we've got to decide to make those changes. And I think that's just something that I connect to.
Yeah.
From an emotional level. So that's why I like that movie more so than others. Like, of course, the artistry is phenomenal. Brad Bird is my favorite director. I love all like his characters, his cinematography, the way he communicates stories. He is just an insane, he's just like a phenomenal storyteller.
Yeah.
Like, I love The Incredibles as well, and Iron Giant, all those movies.
Yeah.
But Ratatouille is just one that I personally connect to on a very emotional level. Another one being Finding Nemo, because of the connection, like the father-son connection I also relate to. But I think for me, I have to connect to it on a very emotional level in order for me to consider it a favorite movie.
Yeah, same. Dude, thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. No, I'm the exact same. I really appreciate that. That's an awesome answer, because when you said there about the father stuff, my dad's literally working right now just non-stop, and I have so much respect for him, and like anything that's related to that, I appreciate you saying that, man. Because when it comes to like the main message that I guess I kind of got from you there is, so there's one thing, right, with me that I learned. So I learned this when I was 19, and I think I was really young to learn this, and that was, I just love life. I just geek out. I don't care anymore. I used to be, so there's a side that a lot of people don't see from me, right? Because I've tried to change it as much as I can. So I'm an incredibly competitive person.
Right.
Like an insanely competitive person. You see me playing sport, you might think I'm a different person.
Right.
I am so just destroy mode, competitive mode. And when I was 19, I've shared this about 2 times on the podcast. So I was playing a table tennis match. Just something really small, with nothing serious. And so in table tennis, it's first to 21.
Right.
And I was getting beaten 19-5. I won 21-19.
Wow.
And however, when I did this match, right, it was a wake-up call. So I was playing against a French person, and a friend as well, and I was so competitive, like because I've always been one of those people that don't give up no matter what. Like I would just keep going. But I was slowly, I was just so obsessed with just winning that I kind of took a side like it showed a side of me that I didn't really want to be anymore, and it really opened up everything for me, because I was like, you know what, I'm still gonna be competitive, but like have fun. And now every day in my life, I like, people always like talk about their stresses and that, whereas me, I'm just over here, I'm just like, you just got to go with the flow. I'm just like chill. If something bad happens, you learn, you grow and stuff. And I know we all have different levels of difficulty in our lives and that, but I just like to take a step back and just enjoy it. So when you said that, that hit me hard. I was like, yes, I appreciate that. So, right, the next one. I've never asked this one either. This is gonna be a fun one. 3 characters you would love to animate and why?
3 categories.
No, no characters.
Oh, characters.
Is there any characters in anything? What would be the 3 you would animate?
Oh man, that's a hard one.
Yeah, I've never asked it. I was coming up with this part today. I was like, what could I ask him?
I think it. Oh man, you put me on a really hard question now. I would love to animate Chef from Ratatouille.
Mm-hmm.
He's just such a bold, fun character. I love his attitude and everything.
Yeah.
I'd love to animate Medusa from Rescuers.
Ooh, nice choice. Yep.
You
didn't expect these today.
No, I didn't. This is really hard.
You didn't sign up to this. You're like, what is this madness?
God. Oh man,
I love this part. This is the best part for me.
This is the part that hurts.
I'm just over here, nice and comfortable, just chilling.
Good characters.
Do you know the funny part is, right? So when I've been doing these podcasts, I think a lot of people forget they can ask me questions, but for some reason nobody does. So I'm just like, you know what? I'll just keep asking. Because you could just go, Ross, hey, I've just given you 2. You have to help me out here. What's your 3? But nobody does. I'm like, okay, fair enough. You go. I'll just let you talk.
I'll throw some back at you. I guess. I don't know. I am a fan of Spider-Verse, so I'm just gonna go with Miles.
Okay.
I gotta go with Miles.
Perfect. No.
I love his like geekiness, trying to be cool when he's not. Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot of characters out there. It's too hard.
Mm-hmm. Good choices.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
We'll roll with that.
Otherwise, I'll be here for an hour trying to condense it down.
Yeah, just emotionally drained after that question. That's like you're just exhausted now for the next 10 minutes.
I need a break.
Okay, so we're going into Halloween, folks, as we all know it. What's your favorite thing about Halloween?
Oh,
are you Halloween? Are you a Halloween person?
I am. Yeah, I love Halloween. I think I like the thing for me, at least. This is where my girlfriend will disagree, because she's a Halloween for the month. Mm-hmm. October is Halloween for her. It's not just the 31st.
Yep.
And so for me, I just loved, like, I don't know. I have quite a dark sense of like aesthetic anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And like I like moody things. So when it comes to how people decorate, I just love the whole decoration side of things. I love the pumpkins. I would love to be able to just step into a street and just see everything decked in Halloween, because that'd be so cool.
It would be.
Like, I remember when I was 5, my parents took me to Disneyland Paris, mm-hmm. and it was in October, and so the whole thing was dressed in Halloween, and they did a Halloween parade, and I think that's the closest I've ever had to that, where I'm just like, this is so freaking cool.
Wow. Dude, no, I would wish the exact same. It's like you see it in movies, right? And it's always like the American movies, because they really enjoy it over there, and it's great to see. But in the UK, I know it depends on where you are in that. Like if you're in more city, then obviously they're almost going to definitely have some sort of decoration, etc. But man, I would love that. Like when you see it in any movies, I don't know, like E.T. and stuff, and you just see all the kids running around crazy. You have Yoda, you have ghosts, you name it. Oh, best part about it.
Yeah, the dressing up is awesome.
Oh man, I really need to improve my game for the Halloween this year, or I don't
Here's
know how
my
I'm going to do
question
it.
then. What are you gonna dress up as for Halloween?
Right. So last year, right, I was thinking of Aladdin, but I was like, you know what? That ain't fun. Not anymore. It used to be fun, but if I was, because obviously I'm going to be at home. How can I terrify people the most on Zoom? That is the objective. That's the only thing that matters the most. So
I like that.
when I was in university, in college, my nickname was the Terminator. Believe it or not. I know
Nice.
that sounds good. Goes back to my competitive mode, right? Okay. So my friends came up was like, so here's Cyborg the Terminator coming in. I was like, great, thanks for the acknowledgement. So I'm going to choose Terminator if I had to do a choice.
Cool.
Like that's another thing I've never shared on the podcast. So hello everyone.
That would be a nickname on the YouTube channel now.
Oh dude,
The Terminator.
it was I just rolled with it because like I loved everyone in my class, but it was just so funny. Like my former lecturer, right, on Zoom, do you can do those face things. Like you can like basically make your face get tracked by certain things or masks on Zoom basically. So he has a T800 mask that every time he calls me, it's just that. So he's just disguised as the Terminator. And I'm like, the respect is there. You love to see it. Okay,
Brilliant.
so we've got 3 more questions. Right, I love this one all the time.
Go for it.
Favorite villain of all time.
Favorite villain. Ooh. That is a hard one.
Nobody expects it, right? So I've been making a common occurrence on the podcast because it's just so much different to your typical favorite superhero.
Yeah, the thing is, everyone says they love the heroes. For me, I've always loved the villains, but it's hard to pick a favorite.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I grew up on. There's 2 Disney movies that I particularly loved growing up.
Right.
And I guess they would like the slightly more aimed at boys movies, which were Hercules and Tarzan.
Right.
And I loved those movies. But looking back on it, I still freaking love Hades.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Hades is such a good villain.
Yeah.
He's just because I love his attitude as well. He's quite camp, and he's got like, I don't know, he has so much like sass about him.
He's
he's also like a bad guy as well.
Yeah.
Like, and he'll go things against your, like, he uses people kind of thing. My only other one I was thinking of was probably Syndrome.
Ooh,
from Incredibles.
I did not
because
that. Okay. Nice.
He's got a really, I don't know, he's got one of those things that's like, I love his backstory, gives you enough to kind of relate to him, but he's obviously got flawed concepts.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't go as far as to say he's my favorite though, just because, I don't know, he doesn't have that sense of, like, I guess that real sense of villainy. He's doing it out of spite more than anything else. Like, he's not down to his core evil.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, if we're going back to Harry Potter, I do love Voldemort.
Yeah, okay.
But like, it's one of those things where like he doesn't have a big enough presence in terms of his capabilities. Like, he's not the one out there doing the dirty work. He's usually getting someone else to do it for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I like those people who really like to get, like the villains who really want to get their hands dirty and actually, like, they get a kick out of being the bad guy.
Yeah, I don't like
maybe.
Jafar.
Actually, no, I've decided it's got to be Heath Ledger's Joker.
The Joker.
He's got to be my favorite villain. I just had that euphoria of like, boom. Why didn't I think of this?
Yeah.
Of course, Heath Ledger's
himself.
Joker.
Good answer. Awesome. Right, we've dived into all the madness about Halloween. We've dived into animation. Now it's the question I ask every single guest on the podcast, and it's the final question. Favorite cartoon as a kid?
Ooh. Okay. Okay, yeah, I definitely know this one. It was SpongeBob SquarePants.
SpongeBob! Wait, okay. Tell us about it. Why do you love it? Tell us about it.
Me and one of my best mates, Jake, were absolutely obsessed with it when it came out. To the point where we would literally be wetting ourselves on the floor every episode. And it got to the point where we were so obsessed with it, like we would draw SpongeBob to a T. We could draw the best SpongeBob.
Yeah.
And we were just doing it in random scenarios. Like I distinctly remember doing loads of comic book sketches of SpongeBob as Mermaid Man.
I've got an interesting thing that you might enjoy. I got to, and I did not expect this, I got to interview the guy who played the voice of Mermaid Man.
No way. That's awesome.
It was such a fun experience. He was on the podcast about a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
And he was also the voice of the guy, of one of the main characters, Emperor's New Groove in Resident Evil. And I was like, I did
That's
not.
so cool.
Oh, it was so fun. When he said Mermaid Man, I was like, oh, it was so fun.
I would have definitely got him to do some lines.
Yeah.
Had to charge him.
Yeah, he's such a nice guy. His name's Joe White, and
Joe White, that's awesome.
He does.
I have to check out the podcast.
Do you know the main intro to Resident Evil? It's like Resident Evil.
I haven't actually played the Resident Evil series.
Dude, it's so good. But he's like the main voice for that, and
nice.
it's mad.
That's awesome.
Oh, dude, you can't SpongeBob, man. It's a legendary. It's
I love it.
Good choice, dude. Good choice.
Some people hate that show, but I, it has its irritating levels, but probably more so. I find the newer stuff slightly more irritating. The original, like first couple of seasons, it's flawless. I love it.
You can't beat it. Arran, it has been insane, incredibly talking to you, man. It's been an absolute pleasure. As always, folks, if you guys are new to the podcast, what am I saying? Not new to the podcast. If you've not seen Arran's work, sorry, let's rephrase that. Go check him out. As always, links are in the description. So if you guys want to go see the content that he's creating through his tutorials and mentoring, you can check it down below. And I'll put all the links to his other social media platforms as well. If you guys are new to the podcast and you want to hit the subscribe button, it really does help the channel go. I really do appreciate it. Most importantly, smash the like button as always. And once again, Arran, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, Ross. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm sure we'll have to keep in touch after this.
Yeah, we definitely will. So thank you so much. And with that said, folks, we will see you in the next episode. Bye for now. Dude! Dude! No joke.